10 things to teach a piano beginner in 10 lessons. Number 8. Name the keys on the music staff on both clefs. Teach how to read the keys on the lines and in between lines or spaces. And finger distances, finger intervals, two keys can create. So let's get started. Before even naming the keys, no matter which system I use, whether it's the German with do, re, mi, fa or A, B, C, D, which I use both, I explain to my students that I divide the keys, all the keys, in two categories. The first one is the keys that are on the lines of the staff, and that we're counting the lines from the bottom up, and there are only 5 lines for the beginners. And like the line is actually cutting the head of the note exactly in the middle, as a belt is cutting the human body into parts, dividing it, or as if you're dividing a pizza into equal half parts. And the keys in between the lines or on the spaces. And in the video description I'll be giving all these exercises and notes for free, and I will also give an exercise drawing of the house of Treble Clef, which my piano beginners very much like, and even younger ages, such as like from 5 years old, get to learn the keys of the treble clef through this exercise of the house of the treble clef, in which the spaces are named floors of the house. So let's move on. I create, after I explain the two categories of keys, I create an imaginary clef for my student and give it a symbol. I name this new imaginary clef with the name of my student or some other name that the student may like, and I attach a symbol to it, either a star or a heart or a boat, a football. It can be whatever you imagine at that moment. And through this imaginary clef, I create a landmark, a baseline. Usually it's going to be the 3rd line, in which I place some key. And from that key on, I explain to my student how all the other keys are going to be named and located. Lines, spaces, next line, next space, etc. Let's move on to the piano. Okay, I chose a star as a symbol for the clef of my student Anna, and I named it after her name, Anna's clef. I draw it in a way that the middle part of the star is exactly located on the 3rd line. And in this 3rd line, I chose to put my bass line, my compass key, my landmark, the middle C, or C on the 4th octave in the American system, or Do in the 1st octave in Helmholtz system. Now, if your student does not remember all the keys in a row, you can write them down like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or Do, La, Si, Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, so that they have this compass on top. Not exactly, a cheat sheet. And now, from this bass line, my C key, I'm placing a neighbor that's on top, that's going upwards. So if this is my C key here, my middle C, which key is going to be this? It's going to be D. I explained in another tutorial why we on the piano say this is up, to our right, and to our left, down. It's because we don't have a vertical piano where the pitches would go higher, and visually we would also see the keys going higher or lower, but our piano keyboard is horizontal. That's why going to the right is higher, going to the left is lower. This is also important to remind to your student. Now, again, from my landmark, my C key, I'm moving down. My neighbor that lives down. Why do I call him neighbor? Because I don't have any other key living in between them. So from C, I moved to B. And I also ask them, is B on Anna's clef on your clef on the line or on a space. They should be able also to visually start differentiate the keys that are on the line and the keys that are on spaces and start to count on which line and on which space. Again, now this time I'm moving from line to line, from my C, my landmark, moving to the next line. I have to jump this one key that was going to be a neighbor, which was going to be on the space, and I'm moving to the next line. This is very important for them to understand. From line to line, the keys, to the next line to the next line, we have to jump one key. Like from here I have the C, I'm jumping this on the space. On the third line, I'm moving to the second line. I'm jumping one key. Same thing goes for the spaces. From space to space, I have to jump one key that is located on a line. From the second space to my third space, I jumped a key that is on the third line. All these things you have to show to them, especially if the student has a better visual stimulus to understand the knowledge you're giving them. And at the same time, show it on the piano. Then ask your student to draw different keys with the landmark staying on the middle C on the third line, and ask them to play it. Or you draw it for them and they play it on the piano while looking at the music sheet, which is also creating the habit of looking at the music sheet. And now move on to the categories. The first category, on the lines, again, I'm on Anna's clef, so C is going to be here. So I have one line on top, the fourth line, and the fifth line, I'm jumping one key to move to the next line, and then two more lines on the bottom. Ask your student to complete this sequence. Don't give it all ready for them. Then the second category, on spaces. If this key was this line, what is going to be this key? First line, first space. It's moving exactly next to it. Second space, third space, fourth space. And finally, if you unite all of those lines, 5 lines, and all the spaces in between, you're going to have all the keys in a row that makes sense. The order makes sense. First line, first space. Second line, second space. Third line, third space. And etc. Now this third exercise is very important. It has to do with that finger intervals, finger distances that two keys create. And it's very important that the student gets it from the beginning, the system of how we draw the keys on the staff and how that applies on the piano in practice. So again, I'm moving to Anna's clef, to the middle C. And I'm asking them to play those intervals, those two keys at the same time. Again, you see it also visually, you can see that the one is like falling on top of the other. So they're going to be very, very close. There are these neighbors. And this is the neighbor that lives upstairs. He's higher than this neighbor. Then from line to line, what did we say before? We have to jump that one key that is in between them. Then line to next space. And you can see also visually that it opens up. So open it. Open it also with your fingers. They can also play with two hands if their hands are so small. That's not important right now. And it's not important for them to name the keys. If you see that their fingers are moving and their eyes are looking at the scores, at those intervals, and the fingers are reacting, that means that the brain clicked. It understood this system of writing keys on the music stuff. The finger is the result. If the finger do it, then the brain got it. Again, line, my landmark. I'm jumping this line, so I'm going to jump the next line. I'm going to move to the next one. I don't need to name this key. Yeah, I can name it little by little when I become more accustomed to the to the music sheet, but that's not important, and that's not the point. The point is for the fingers, the hands, to understand and to react to what the eyes are reading. Now let's move on to this one. The landmark moved 1 seat, 1 position lower. And now I have space to space. They should already know that space to space jumps 1 key. Let's go. Their brain subconsciously, or maybe consciously, should already understand that here I have the same bass. And visually it opens up, so let's open. Space, I jumped this space, and I went from this to this. And then again from this space to this space. I'm not gonna go here, that would be a line. I'm gonna go to this space. Space, jumping this and this space, and moving on to the next one. To be honest, I created those imaginary clefs because I was bored giving the same information over and over again, like over 1,000 times. I like to create new ways of teaching the same things, because when I become bored, it becomes also like an autopilot, and it becomes like dry knowledge that I'm giving to the student. I'm not making them engage neither with me, neither with the lesson or the music, and it becomes also boring for them. That's why I created a special personal clef for the student. I give them some power. I ask them, name it, whether with your name or something else. Decide which symbol you want it to have. And I don't want to give them all the ready information. I want to give them an instrument. That's why I'm using an imaginary clef in the beginning, and then I'm just giving them on the treble clef 1 key. I'm not giving all the keys, and I'm asking them to name all the other keys that are on the lines or in the spaces, and the bass clef. So this engages them again. It makes it personal. It becomes like a game. I'm giving them also power. I'm not, when you're giving all the information to your student, it's like you're considering that he's not maybe so intelligent, you don't respect them. And they feel that. They may not be able to understand it consciously, but they understand it. And this will have consequences in the future, if there's going to be a future with you and that student, to like music and to like piano. So that's the story behind the imaginary clefs. And I've had piano beginners of smaller ages that get it, and they engage with it. So let's move on to the treble clef and the bass clef. And now moving on to the treble clef and bass clef, or sol clef and fa clef. Again, I'm not giving all the names, I'm only giving the landmark. It's easier in the German system because the treble clef, the sol clef, is drawn from the second line, in which second line the key of sol is located. Same thing goes for bass clef or fa clef, where on the fourth line where I start drawing it, the fa key is located. Now, if this is G key, on the second line, on the first line I'm going to have, again, remember that we have to jump 1 key that is in between the 2 lines and move on to this one. And without even naming the keys, ask your student to play all those keys in a row now that he knows that this is his first line. Second line, third, fourth, fifth. And that's it. Then you can ask him to name them or not. And look how visually all those keys that are now pressed, they are creating all those spaces in between. So what are those spaces? Exactly all those keys. First space, second, third, fourth. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you marry them, if you place them all together from the first line and all the first space, second line, second space, you have all the keys in a row. Same thing goes for bass clef. F is our landmark, so this should be A. Ask your student. You can play also half the keys and ask your student to play the other halves. The other line, the second line, the first line. Visually, all those spaces in between are our spaces here, and all those lines and spaces, if we marry them all together, and we have all the keys in a row, in an order. And now, this bar, very important bar, where is the secret of how you can teach both clefs at the same time on the same lesson, even piano beginners. Middle C or C on the 4th octave or Do on the 1st octave with the ledger line. But what's the difference? In treble clef, it's beneath the music staff, and in bass clef, it's on top. You can then draw a small piece, write down even at the time of the lesson for your student, and explain to them that this is exactly the same key in the same octave, just on the treble clef it's beneath the music staff, and on the bass clef it's on top. And then from then on, ask your student to go up. You can see also visually it goes up. It starts to stick on the treble clef, D. But on the bass clef it goes down. Then again it goes up on the treble clef. On the bass clef it goes down. Up, down, up, down, and etc. With both hands they can open as much as they like. And then start by playing this piece, or ask your student to play it if you already have taught them the rhythm and time signatures and how to count. Right hand, left hand. Again, remind them that this is the same key, this is their center. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, the same key, and also you can use the same finger. 1, 2, now it goes down and goes back up to the same key and the same fingers. Enjoy your practice, and I'll see you in my next piano teaching tip video.